Oh, Istanbul, where's Constantinople? Now it's Istanbul.
Kicking off this panel, it's about onboarding new developers into ZKP Tech, all the struggles, all the great stuff that's going on. We have a thought leaders in that narrative. There's many smart guys next to me, and they will be able to introduce themselves very soon. So developer onboarding is it's a process of integrating new people into existing teams and actually getting them familiar with what each team and each tech stack is doing and building. There's certain processes that should be established to do that. There's certain crackles that exist in our industry and at ZKP narrative. And let's kick it off. That's going to be our topic. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, tell us in few words what they are doing, what's their position, how they are involved into onboarding new devs, or their perspective of being onboarded by somebody else into building a ZKP tech. Let's start by order of how we see it, so please go ahead.
Hello everyone, my name is Gyan Lakshmi. Everyone popularly knows me as Gyan, but it's really hard to pronounce my actual name. I work as a developer advocate with the Staffnet Foundation, and I'm also building another developer community called the Phoenix Guild, which is focused on diversity and inclusion. We definitely need more female developers in this space, so no doubt about that. I have been in the Web3 space as a developer advocate in the education and content space for about 7 years now. I've developed content for a lot of different protocols, which has helped onboard a lot of developers. And we have seen this new wave of zero knowledge proofs that's just taken over the ecosystem, where people are interested in getting onboarded, and we are trying out different things both from the foundation as well as our community to just simplify the learning experience, to make sure that people feel comfortable to ask questions. There's a safe space for learning, and that's generally my expertise: building content, making sure that there is a learning path for everyone, and it doesn't seem too overwhelming for people to get onboarded to any particular technology for that matter.
Cool. Yeah, my name is David. I am a DevRel at Tyco. So Tyco, we are mainly targeting Ethereum developers, people who develop on Ethereum, and we are working to make Ethereum cheaper for them. So yeah, we're working on Ethereum scaling, and we try to do that in the most minimal way possible that doesn't add on any different security assumptions, or at least minimizes those. So that's the main challenge that we're tackling at Tyco.
Thanks.
Cool. My name's Chewy. I'm working at Lida Foundation. We're essentially making a ZK VM as a service. ZK EVM or ZK VM, we're working to have it be something that can be done on-chain with verification, or can just be a process that different developers can work with. I personally also am pretty new to this space. 6 months ago, I was working at Google and spent 10 years working at Google. So I'm somebody who's recently gotten convinced that this is the way forward, and feel like there's a lot that we can do to really convince more people that this is how we are going to distribute things, distribute the world, services in healthier ways.
Hey everyone, I'm Mirko. I'm at DevRel at Consensus. We are a software company. Some of the products you might know, like MetaMask, Linea, been in this space since 2016. I was also a former engineer that then moved more to the DevRel space. I have a big passion about community. I also do a lot of stuff around account construction. So I'm super interested in how always onboard a new developer and we will do it.
Thank you very much, dear panelists. That was a proper introduction. Okay, let's kick it off then. So let's start from why is onboarding new developers is important for each of your projects, or for the narrative in general, and how do you, as a DevRel, for example, set the stage for this? So would you start? Who wants to start? No orders, guys. Let's just
Let's
have a
go.
productive
Let's go.
conversation. There's the DevRel consensus probably have a few picks of that. So
Yeah,
let's-
for me, it's interesting because I'm not really a big kind of content creator person. I really like real life kind of social interaction. I'm very big on things like in-person events, hackathons. We always are around big hackathons like H Global. We're always looking for like the smartest team, kind of like people, and how we can best support them into our products. I mainly focus on MetaMask, but we also have Lineas Layer 2, so the team is doing like a great job around how to create docs, how to make sure that these people they have all the support when they want to deploy at the top. And also we do things like Twitter Spaces, community calls. We always try to partner. I don't like the word partnership too much. It's more like collaborate with other views and other wallets in the space. And really like this is what I really like about Web3, which is like the community kind of drives the project. And
just to narrow it down, I'm a new dev that's been working in Google, and I was hired or onboarded by Consensus, and I come to you saying, hey man, listen, never used any documentations, I've never touched any dev tools in ZKP. How do you step by step guide them? Where do you send them to actually start looking at documentation?
because we can start from our docs. So go to Linea, check out our docs. That's it. What I always say to new devs is like try things out, don't get overwhelmed with content. It's really easy as an engineer to start to watch video, read stuff, but never try things out. I really go out there, try to deploy it up, see what it works, see what it doesn't work, be connected to the community, be out in Twitter, be active, check out Telegram's community.
Okay, and as you man transitioned from Google just recently, can you describe a little bit of that process, getting to touch the new things, especially in ZKP? Obviously, the tech has been exist for 11 years, I suppose, but it's just been on hype for the last few years. So for you, transitioning from big corporation where everything is set straight, there's a huge document of how do you onboard new people, and what was for you that process?
Yeah, no, I feel like there's a big component to this where it was kind of brought up in one of the earlier talks that talking about educating people isn't something that people like to hear. But yet there is this kind of gap right now where a lot of software developers coming through school, coming through boot camps, what they're being focused on is really learning how do you fit within the Web 2 worldview? How do you fit within the corporate mindset that has really set up, we are working you through taking on one small project and moving forward. For me, what's been really interesting is this is such, getting back to another space of the web that's kind of in the Wild West stage of it. And so there's definitely elements where it can get confusing going through, trying to just watch videos and trying to keep up with everything that way. That's where I think a big thing that's really important for us right now is making it practical, making there be practical, whether it's demos or tutorial type of things that get people just getting their hands dirty, just trying it out. I think the more and more we can make it so that there's a low barrier to entry for somebody who just took a Python class and now wants to figure out how do I think about zero knowledge proofs from what I've learned through a Python fundamentals. Like that's where we need to really be focusing on, because there's so many people who I think would engage with this if they understood the different ways that it can give them more meaningful strengths.
Thank you very much, man. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Guys, do you want to add something on that? What's you as a dev advocate? Obviously, have your processes, maybe you as a dev type.
Yeah, sure. I think tackling the first question in terms of why, right? That's a very big piece that a lot of protocols, I think, are trying to figure out. Why would some developer get onboarded onto your protocol, right? I think you have to show them right from the beginning that there is a path for you in terms of where do you go from here. Like you start with like say meetups or IRL events, you come here, you get to learn something, then what next? Maybe you're hosting online boot camps, maybe you're collaborating with other communities and doing something more intense. So send them there. and then show them that there are bigger things. There's a hacker house. You come to, it's a more exclusive event. So you get mentorship. You get one-on-one mentorship with people in the ecosystem. So I think as developer advocates and as protocols, we need to make sure that every single developer we are onboarding, we need to show them that journey, because most of the people we lose out from Web3 because obviously they stop making money. Either their companies are not able to raise funds, they are not able to get jobs, and we need to fix that. We help make companies. We should help make jobs so that when these developers get onboarded, they see that there's a journey ahead of them, either as an entrepreneur or as a developer. And this journey itself is what we need to design as developer advocates, as protocols come together, and at every step of the way, who's your user? How do you build creative stuff to onboard this user, right? For example, yesterday we ran a treasure hunt, which was extremely basic. Even though people didn't know anything about zero knowledge proofs, they had a clue, and it was like, you do this, you break this cipher, and then you get into it. So we started with cryptography, and then they broke the cipher, and then they got something, and then they figured out like when was the first ever paper published. There is a small hidden word in that paper, so it makes you read the first paragraph of the paper, and you really understand what it means. That zero knowledge proofs is just an interaction between a prover and a verifier, right? And then there are some underlying mathematics. So when you direct them to the right places, that curiosity will automatically spark. They're trying to solve something which leads them to the next step, things like that. And I think a lot of people are doing it, but there needs to be more effort, time and effort that needs to be put into these things. I personally think that hackathons are great, but I feel like hackathons don't see as much productivity as hacker houses themselves if run in the right format. Because in a hacker house, you have a limited amount of audience, you know that there are set goals for them, and you can make sure that every single team that hacks at your hacker house can have a mentor from that ecosystem who can tell them what could be the path for them. And if they have a path, then they can go back and work on that themselves for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And then, voila, you have a company, you have a developer who's working in a full-time job.
Do you want to add anything?
I don't have too much to add. I think these are good responses, and we agree with those.
Sure. Yeah, that actually was a great response to that question. I agree completely now. I know. You and I haven't really introduced myself, guys. I've been to another panel. That's why I haven't said who I am. I'm not a technical person at all. I run a VC fund that invests into ZKP technology. And for me, it's also an exploration. I see, there's many companies like Ropes as a service, using the ZK technology that we invested in as a fund, and now I see it from behind the line, how it's actually happening. Because obviously, I spoke to many ZK teams, and yesterday I had a long conversation with Matter Labs, for example, about that topic. And there's really a struggles so far and certain obstacles in terms of our boarding. Sometimes there's, first of all, lack of documentation. Sometimes, like Linea probably don't have that problem, but
we are obviously a big company with some sort of kind of.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a documentation team.
Yeah, I guess as a big company,
Just like the team.
we're kind of privileged in a way that some other project might not, but that's why I love the open source community so much, because it lets the people that are building on your product also contribute to it.
yes, and that's exactly what I had a conversation with them about. Because the bigger teams they do have that process set up, the smaller teams might not. And I would love to have a Tycho pick on that as well.
About what's the question?
Yeah, the question was about how your documentation process set up. Do you have a special team like Consensus have, or it's
me and him. The way we think about it is it's I think one thing that maybe a lot of teams can relate to is you have to first know what it is you're offering. Sometimes even at Tycho, I mean, it might sound bad, I don't even know what we're building in a way sometimes. I know that sounds really bad, but I think that happens for a lot of teams. are you actually offering? What's your true product market fit, right? Like in the beginning, it was like, okay, you can deploy a contract and like run a node or something like that, right, for Tyco. But it's like, sometimes you're like wrong about what you think your product actually is offering, and it's something else. Like, it's like you might think that like running a node is something you want other people to do, but your audience might actually be like a roll-up as a service provider, or you're like, you might not really want someone to deploy a contract. You might want them to like migrate a contract. You just have to know like what exactly you want them to do here. I think people can come to the docs and they can be like, there's just all these like random guides or tutorials and things, and it's like, it really, at least for us, we just try to think of like, what are we actually trying to do, and then try to make simple structures. I think humans usually understand things through creating some mental model about things, so you have to have hierarchies of some type of structure, and we try to make sure that everything follows those structures so people can form like good mental models around it.
What if I have like, okay, I read your documentation, I went through the structure that you set up for your dev, and I have certain questions. Do I come to you guys, both of you, ask you direct questions? Do you have any special support system that you set up that I can write to, or how does that work?
You can there's like a search in the docs, so you can try searching. Like maybe you can't find something there, then you can come to like our Discord, and you can like ask a question there. I think I don't know, I think that some people are gonna try using these like AI like tuned models a little bit more now. Yeah, I'm seeing it more in documentation and stuff, so I don't think it's here like right now, but I think people are gonna try to just get something to parse their documentation, create like a little chatbot, and then you can just ask that. So.
Yeah, we have an experimental version of that. So this is actually, documentation itself is a huge problem. Both as a developer advocate, I can attest to building this is a huge problem, and as a developer who works with other different protocols, searching for the right things, given in the right format for you, which you can process and be able to run stuff. It's a nightmare sometimes when new protocols are there, and especially with L2s. Like Stacknet is a layer 2. It's a permissionless blockchain which also helps in scaling Ethereum. It's built on this underlying algorithm called Stacks. And one of the problems with such slightly more complex technologies is that there is a lot to unpack, but all of this need not be unpacked to the same audience. Like I'm sure maybe 1 out of 10 people here, and I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers, I haven't met any of you, but maybe 1 out of 10 over here is interested in actually learning how Stacks work. Right? But I have a whole documentation about like, this is Stacks, this is a mathematical tool. It's not required. Maybe 3 out of 10 are interested in actually understanding how to deploy a Cairo contract. So I have to work on finding out those metrics, and I think that is very, very important to understand what are the different types of persona that you have, and then prioritize your documentation work accordingly. If your persona is developer heavy, like obviously, right, for layer 2s, we want people to build projects. We want people to build companies. That's our ultimate goal with layer 2s. We want people to be, why did we create layer 2s? Because Ethereum was not scalable, right? And initially we were pushing the narrative of build companies, build projects on Ethereum. Now we are pushing the narrative of, now we have layer 2s. So it is much more scalable. It's much more faster. But the older narrative remains the same. You still need to build companies. You still need to deploy projects. So that should be your final persona, and then different things that lead to it. There are developers who will develop on your technology, so you build documentation for them. And then you have people who are, maybe want to go deep dive and build infrastructure level stuff. And then you want people to build tooling for your project, right? So different people need different types of documentation, and I think just figuring out that persona and prioritizing that persona is very, very important. In my team, my colleague has done a great job. He has built something called Stacknet Book, which is fairly straightforward. You just do book.stacknet.io, you'll find all of the cool stuff, and then it leads to other different links like Cairo Book, if you want to deep dive into the programming language Cairo, which is a programming language for Stacknet. So you go there, you find, it's similar to your Rust documentation, and then if you want to go into Stacks, deeper into Stacks, then there is other documentation for that. So I think I like this format, and I like that I don't have to be in one place struggle to find a lot of information, but I can go to different places and then kind of come back.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much, guys. If there's people that onboarding into ZKP Tech right now, please make notes because this is like gold, to be honest. Yes, Julie,
Yeah,
please
one
go
thing I
ahead.
want to add in is just, I think something that's really undervalued, especially in how a lot of documentation has been put together just in software, just in education for a long time, is the fun. I think there's a lot of elements where learning things is draining on people. And trying to get to the point where you actually feel like you've done something meaningful when you're just going through one doc after the other. What have you gotten done today? You know, you end the day and you're like, okay, well, I read a doc and I understand a little bit more about a Stark. If we are able to make more and more things like the treasure hunt that you described, where you end up really meaningfully feeling like I completed something, it doesn't necessarily need to be a very meaningful task from the perspective of this is what my money is going to be made on in the future, but it can be right now, I completed a task that really felt like it was a goal. If the website gives you some points, 5 points for successfully having discovered and understood and put together a zero knowledge proof structure, those are the types of things that I think really will also help engage a lot of people who, at this point, they can kind of vaguely see value in learning these things, but getting us to this next step where it is actually rewarding to the developer as they are learning the process.
Yeah, I agree. I think there should be more gamified learning experiences.
I think, yeah, I wanted to add to the developer persona part. I don't know why the light still works. It doesn't work.
It's more gold.
I guess
online.
for the developer persona part, we at MetaMask, we are in a kind of very interesting situation of having all these thousands of developers that we work.
Manufacturing. Please charge.
AI is taking over.
But yeah, I'm saying we're in this kind of
It's an odd drill.
position where we have all these developers deploying to our product, but we don't really know who these developers are, right? We set hosts, sometimes we have to make a request, but it's I've worked in very big scale software companies before, and you always had the kind of good idea who was using your software, right? But what I find interesting in Web3 is that it's really hard, especially for things like a wallet, to know who is deploying this app that connects to the wallet. It's like, what kind of metrics do we really want to track, right? And this is a challenge that we kind of struggle on the day-to-day. It's like, okay, what are we gonna track really, right? And what sense do we make for all this data we're tracking?
Yeah, that was exactly my next question about different traditional workflow process and dealing with the technology that doesn't have, it's not exist for that long. And how different is that? Maybe start from Google experience and what you have right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's also an element where one thing I was trying to allude to earlier is for a lot of people, there's kind of a direct chain of you go through boot camp, you go to college, and you learn kind of the typical skills of getting through an interview. Once you get through an interview, now you have somebody who's supposed to give you just the right mentorship that gets you engaged. I think there's a lot of elements where right now we are engaging in versions of this technology that don't quite match what those boot camps are teaching. We're taking things a few steps further. I mean, and as you brought up earlier, like this technology, a lot of it isn't really new. It's things that have been written about in papers for over a decade, but we're now at a point where we're trying to get people to actually engage with this stuff. And when we're going through it in a boot camp, that's also where I see there's so much of this rewarding element of being told, you understood this correctly. Here is a positive grade that you are getting. We need to make sure that we are giving just good environments where people can feel rewarded for the progress that they are making in understanding these steps. And I think the more that we can do that, the easier it will be. For me personally, yeah. So for me personally,
We'll overcome those obstacles, guys. We're gonna have this panel wherever it is.
yeah.
AI music, Skynet taking over, Terminator's coming, wherever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so like, I feel like the more that we can reward and incentivize, yeah. The more that we can reward and incentivize the learning process, just getting people to see that there's something meaningful that they were able to successfully do within this. Like when I decided to start learning Rust, what ended up being more useful to me than just going through the Rust guidebook was to go onto a website called Coding Game. Mm-hmm. And that site gives you just these different random challenges. They say, hey, there's a chef trying to make sure that they have the right set of ingredients for something that they're cooking. Here, we'll give you some inputs, and you have to give the right outputs. And those types of processes, to me, are the things that really help to make it feel more meaningful, even if it's doing it on your own, that can get you from one step to the next. And how do you actually feel like you are getting further and feel like you're learning the right thing rather than just you read another doc today.
And, yeah, if you guys have to add something on that, happy to go. If not, then that would be the outcome question of what you just said. How do you measure the successful onboarding, and how do you refine that in the future? What's the processes that should be set up in place to actually keep that dev going, keep him learning, keep him developing himself to grow? Any processes that you could suggest, or you already experienced, or where you think is a good addition to the crowd and team?
I think the end goal really should be, we want new developers to really feel like they are able to make something that they came up with, that they planned out for themselves, and that operates at least 80% successfully to the degree of what they were looking for it to do. So it requires two elements. This requires, on the one hand, inspiring people to really think about their own types of applications of some of these new types of systems. I think there's a lot of different ideas that are coming into play right now around how we can use zero-knowledge proofs in new ways that aren't just about, making the blockchain a little bit faster, but are also about how do you, if you're trying to develop your own game and you want to incorporate in some process that then engages it with another game that you're also developing, and have a cross communication between two games that then holds on to the identity of the user without revealing too much of the logic that one game is running about that user, but can share, say, information about how they've developed their sprites for this game. Different ideas that just get people playing around with what are the different ways that using a zero-knowledge proof, using identity, using proof of just these different spaces. We could have proof that a process that actually ran in the way that you want it to, without giving too many details about what that process was. The more we can get people to come up with their own idea to do it, I see that as being the end goal. And so then each step that gets them building something a little bit more complex, a little bit more free form, a little bit more their own, and a little bit less of they followed an exact tutorial, I see that as being our goals.
Thank you very much. Guys at Consensus, do you have your ways to measure the successful onboarding and
I think for me what's interesting is like what level of engagement should we have with these developers, right? So we obviously have our own way of measuring success, which is like based on data usage and how many transactions are being executed, etc. But it's like, if, for example, look at the first 100 app that use MetaMask, probably like 25% of them are kind of Ponzi or stuff that really ethically I don't really want to interact with. But also on the other side, that's some of the biggest user of my product, right? It's like it's a kind of a weird kind of situation, which I guess differs from Web2 as well, which is like what kind of level of engagement should I have with these people, right? I'm curious to see like what you guys think about it.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, I'm very curious. Like, Tycho started people. How do you measure that?
Yeah, like with measuring these kinds of things, like it's a little difficult because I'm thinking back to how we have measured some of these things, like how are people like we take a few different metrics actually, and we have like a feedback form, and we get a sense of like how is their experience, you know, running a node or deploying a contract and things like that. But I'm like careful to say that it's like useful because I'm not sure if it is. Like it might just be collecting data for the sake of collecting data, and I don't know, I'm not convinced that collecting metrics sometimes is useful if you don't do anything with it. So like if it's like an engineering problem, a lot of times you want to collect some data because it's very like except like if you're trying to do like database scaling, you're trying to figure out something about a system and you want to push the performance, like you need to take some metrics because you know exactly what your end state is, right? So you know if you tune certain parameters that you're improving what you're doing because the performance is going up or you're opening up the bandwidth, and it's like very obvious. But if you're trying to like get the developer experience, it's quite difficult to I think it's more difficult to use the traditional data you collect from that. So I would say that like at least from my experience, the more valuable thing is just like trying to use your product as much as you can. Like and like the more you use your product, the more you actually, and if you have like good empathy for it and you believe in what you're doing, the more you'll feel inspired to change the things that aren't really working. But yeah, the data thing is like, I just think it's dangerous because sometimes you end up like, I remember I was like collecting some data on some things, and it's like, you can end up wasting time doing that. And you don't want to like waste time just collecting data if it's not ending up making a better product.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree with most of the panelists in terms of that it is difficult to understand what kind of metrics should we take, because every event that we do, and you know, there are so many parameters to it, that in which location does it happen, what are the kind of, what is the environment where, you know, some things are happening, what are the kind of developers that are present there. But overall, I think after experimenting for a bit, at least I have come up with a structure for the events that I am involved in, because I like to know that if I am also giving my time hosting this event or doing this, you know, developer onboarding process, what am I getting out of this and what are the people going to be getting out of this? Without having that sort of, pre-preparation in mind, I feel like it can just go any which ways, the event. So I like to keep like some small metrics for meetups, for example. It doesn't have to be numbers, but just the fact in terms of how interactive was the meetup. Did people ask questions to the speakers? Did the speaker itself feel comfortable, you know, coming in and talking? And then over a period of time, this could become something more interesting. Like, hey, is the same speaker talking at every meetup, or are you getting more ecosystem projects to come and speak at these meetups? That means, you know, your ecosystem is increasing. And then how many people are actually able to go from these meetups and start contributing to open source projects? That's an interesting metric. I'm not saying we are tracking all of these, but it's interesting to see what kind of different pathways can you create for the developers you're onboarding, and then try to capture metrics basis that. Because if you don't capture metrics, then you're also not sure how do you want to structure your next set of events. Like for me, because I've been hosting a lot of hacker houses, for this particular hacker house, Starknet hacker house that we hosted, I was very particular that every team should have a mentor pairing, because in the past couple of events I've noticed that if there is help in the room, then the projects automatically do better and they tend to, you know, be long term. They also eventually tend to contribute to open source. So it doesn't have to be like a data collection metric, but there has to be, I feel like, some sort of different things for you as a developer advocate. I don't know what else to call it but metrics, but I feel like some sort of metrics for you to understand, like, because the final, like I said, there has to be a final destination for onboarding all of these developers. You can't just onboard them and not show them a path. You have to give them a path. They can contribute to open source, they can build companies, they can become developers, they can become, developer advocates, they can become ambassadors. There has to be some path for them to stay connected in your ecosystem. Otherwise, you will lose them, because everywhere there are hackathons, they will jump from one project to another project to another project, keep getting bounties. What's the incentive for them to stay in your ecosystem? What are you offering? Are you offering them mentorship? Are you offering them, ability to build companies and then connections going forward with VCs and things like that? And I think every event that we do, every IRL event or online event that we do, we are trying to collect feedback based on this final metric, which is people being engaged in our ecosystem.
How do you follow up with them?
We have different methods to follow up. One is we have something called as an ecosystem orientation call. So anyone who's new, they get into the ecosystem orientation call. And then every 3 months, every 6 months, we keep engaging with them in the form of like events or in the form of, so another program that we've come up with is called the mentorship program, where we ask them, what is your journey in our particular ecosystem, like, and what help do you need from us? And this mentorship could come in any format. This mentorship could be, I'm a beginner and I want to learn Cairo. So we connect them with a Cairo developer in our existing ecosystem who wants to mentor. Or they say that, hey, I'm at this stage in my company and I've already built in Staffnet and I'm looking to raise funds. So then we connect them with a VC mentor who's helping them build a business model. So this is something that we are, many of these things, like I said, it's just getting started. Probably 3-6 months down the line. So I don't know how many of these are even going to be successful, but I think this is the long-term thing that we have to start looking at, because I have been looking at these hackathons and some of these, a lot of meetups. I've been to a lot of meetups, I've done a lot of hackathons, and just the retention rate is so poor. It's so poor, like I don't even remember someone who participated in the hackathon last year is actually continuing to build in Staffnet at all. But I know that people who built in the last hacker house, or where we made sure that we had that connection, we gave them the support that they needed, came back to apply for our next events and did more open source contributions and are asking to be more involved in the ecosystem. So I think that's something that I would like to have eventually, for people to be able to find their way to stay connected in the ecosystem, and making sure that they are also getting something out of it,
All right, that was really good, and you already touched my next question. This question probably going to be last but not least from me, which I'm going to continue, guys, to ask you a lot of questions after we finish this panel, but I'm going to let the audience to ask a few questions after that as well. We have another 12-15 minutes to go, so. You already touched that, and I want to speak about how do you foster the collaborative team, how do you create the company culture, which you already kind of touched that. It's in the last question. What about you guys? How do you actually create this company culture, and how do you foster that collaboration inside of your teams? We spoke about events, we spoke about hackathons, we spoke about boot camps, and what's your process? Let's start from you, Mark.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of similar in the sense that we have this ambassador program where we get the brightest mind, Web3, people that we worked with in the past, people that are very well known in the community, people that have used our product, hack our hackathons, and we like to kind of stay in touch with them, make sure that they have the support that they need for their product as well. So if they want to create content that doesn't necessarily have to be related to us, but we like to kind of support them in the content creation. Obviously, if it's consensus content, it's great, even better. We had a gathering actually yesterday with our ambassadors in here, so every time there is a big event like the Connect, we try to meet them in real life as well. We do the usual stuff, Twitter Spaces, community call, every I think it's bi-weekly, sorry, every 2 weeks, we have this kind of very technical Twitter space where we talk about the tooling, infrastructure, and so on.
Yeah, truly. Obviously, you know, working at Google, sometimes it feels like a sect. You know, there's so much going on in there, and that's how you guys create this collaboration. Do you feel that in Web3 and ZK space, do you have that? Is it enough for you already? Do you feel that collaboration is flourishing?
So the first thing I want to say is just I've been finding events like this one are really a much more positive space than I've had through almost my entire time in Web 2, where just the excitement that you get to engage with different people about what they are working on, why they believe in what they're doing, is not something that a lot of people in that environment are used to. There's a lot of people who are going to places like Google and getting these types of jobs because, you know, they'll get paid. And that's about it. And their goal is to do the maximum that they need, or the minimum they need to do to not get fired and continue getting paid. I think one of the things that really makes an environment, though, feel really positive and collaborative is getting people to really feel that asking for help is mutually beneficial. Because there's an element where even being a mentor is an excellent way to learn. You know, just having somebody else who's coming in at an earlier stage in the process than where you're at, who has their own questions about their own pathway through, which is almost always going to be at least a little bit differently than how you went through your journey. It's always helpful. It always helps both sides to be able to come together, communicate, and find better understandings and be able to just even speak better about the different projects they're working on. So that's one of the things I have really been finding. This is an environment where people are positive about their excitement, positive about asking questions about what people are engaging with. And you know, the idea that you're not trying to ask questions to stump somebody. You're trying to ask questions to get them to engage further with you. And so I think a lot of that is something that I've been finding very positive in just the ecosystem of Web3, and I find in general, the more that you can make that type of a collaborative feeling for people, the more it really moves them forward into feeling comfortable just trying new things.
Very much.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I would add is like, you can like just like sometimes like you'll notice like if you have a hard time solving a problem, you can like take a shower, like go for a walk, or like go chill and do something else, and like somehow you've like solved your problem. Like this solution came to you in your sleep or something. So like I think sometimes it's useful to not like directly focus on the thing that you guys are supposed to focus on. Like to give an example, like, you know, for like our team and everything, like if we're all like hanging out together, it's like, I get it, like you could very directly focus on the problem and be like, hey, let's try to collaborate and work on this and that. And there's times for that, but it's also really valuable and insightful to just chill, play some poker, like go out and eat, meet someone new and just like go eat with them and just like talk about something on the side. And somehow that can be more productive in a way because, I don't know, it's like this weird thing that happens sometimes when you focus too directly on something, you end up not figuring out so much, and then you're kind of doing something on the side and you end up solving more. So, I don't know, that's my take.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's maybe get it to the audience. Guys, we spoke about onboarding into our precious ZKP tech. Do you have any questions to speakers? Anyone wants to ask anything, clarify, maybe get onboarded somehow, maybe ask what's Darknet, Tycho, Consensus people are doing? Please go ahead. Forest of hands. This is that, and I suppose we had a very productive conversation. Guys, thank you very much for participating. Please, round of applause.